The Yarick dominion was ancient. It had ruled the stars for thousands of years, its empire stretching across hundreds of systems, swallowing entire civilizations without so much as a stutter. Its war machine was relentless, precise, and ruthlessly logical. No species had ever resisted them for long. When the Yarick expanded, planets surrendered. When the Yarick commanded, lesser species obeyed. Humans? Humans were barely a footnote in their historical records. Primitive, chaotic, emotionally volatile, unworthy of serious consideration. The only reason Earth and its colonies had been left alone was that they had nothing of value, no technology worth stealing, no resources rare enough to justify military action. They were insects at best, mildly amusing with their endless conflicts and ridiculous attachment to individual lives. So when a Yarick patrol squad landed on New Terra 3, it was just another routine mission. Commander Gorzul stepped off the sleek black ramp of his ship, the twin suns of the colony planet burning in the sky. His scaled, violet skin gleamed under the light as he adjusted the targeting visor over his ridged brow. Behind him, his squad, 6 elite Yarick soldiers, descended in perfect formation. They moved with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine, their every step calculated, their expressions unreadable behind dark battle helms. New Terra 3 was a tiny settlement, one of many scattered across the fringes of human space. It barely warranted attention. Still, protocol dictated that the Dominion periodically assert its presence, remind these insignificant species who ruled the galaxy. The streets were quiet as the Yarick strode through, boots clanking against the metal walkways. The few humans who had been outside quickly retreated into their homes, watching from behind reinforced windows. Gorzul barely spared them a glance. He had seen this behavior before: fear, submission, as it should be. Then the child appeared. A small human boy, no older than 6 cycles, stood in the middle of the street. He had messy brown hair, a gap-toothed grin, and a round, sun-kissed face. He wore a red jacket 2 sizes too big for him, the sleeves hanging past his tiny hands. But it was what he held that caught the Yarick commander's attention. A weapon. Gorzul's visor registered the object as a firearm. Bright blue, shaped like an Earth projectile launcher. Primitive, but still dangerous. The child aimed it directly at them, feet planted in a wide stance, like he had seen too many action holovids. The Yarick squad halted. Tension crackled in the air. The child's face twisted in exaggerated menace, and he growled, "You're bad guys, huh?" Gorzul narrowed his eyes. "What? You're bad guys," the child repeated, voice high but firm. "Like the ones in Galactic Rangers." The Yarick exchanged glances. The boy made a clicking sound with his tongue. "Pew pew," he shouted. Nothing happened. Gorzul's confusion turned to annoyance. "What is this?" The boy scrunched his nose. "A standoff. I'm the hero. You're the villains. Now I'm gonna blast you." He lifted the toy blaster higher. The Yarick sensors registered no heat, no power fluctuations, no energy output. A toy. Gorzul sneered. Disrespect. That's what this was. These creatures didn't even take the Yarick seriously. With a sigh, he lifted his own weapon, a sleek disintegration rifle. One quick shot. A lesson. A reminder of who ruled the stars. The plasma bolt struck the child's chest in an instant. A flash of blue light. A faint, surprise gasp. Then nothing. Silence. The tiny body crumpled to the ground. Gorzul lowered his rifle. "Let's move." His squad remained motionless. One of them, a younger soldier, shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, that was a youngling." Gorzul scoffed. "And?" The young soldier hesitated. "It was unarmed. It pointed a weapon at me. It was a toy." Gorzul clicked his mandibles in irritation. "Does that matter? The message is clear." The young soldier fell silent. A gust of wind swept through the empty street, rustling the child's oversized jacket. The humans watching from their windows recoiled in horror. None of them moved to pick up the body. Gorzul turned, bored already. "Come. We have more systems to visit." The Yarick patrol departed without another glance. Back in orbit, Their ship rose through the sky, sleek and predatory. They charted a course for their next destination, their systems erasing the event from their logs. A minor detail, a footnote. But down below, in the quiet of New Terra 3, someone did move. A woman strode into the street, her steps slow and deliberate. She knelt beside the small body, her fingers trembling as she reached out. The child's face was frozen in an expression of bewilderment, his toy still clutched in one tiny hand. For a long moment, she did not move. A breath, then another. When she finally looked up, her face was unreadable. Not grief, not rage. Something far, far worse. Cold, controlled calculation. The humans in the settlement backed away instinctively. They recognized her. General Helena Roger. She was a legend, though she had long since left the front lines. She had led human forces against impossible odds, outmaneuvered enemies that should have crushed her, and torn through fleets that outnumbered hers 100 to 1. She had once disabled a dreadnought with nothing but a jury-rigged EMP and a single bullet. And she had only one rule. No one touched her family. She lifted her son's body in her arms, holding him close. The warmth was already fading. His weight, so small, so light, pressed against her as if he were only sleeping. The wind howled. The colony's mayor stepped forward hesitantly. General Roger. I. Her voice was quiet. Who? The mayor swallowed. It was the Yarrick Patrol. They came through, and it was... Who? She repeated. The mayor hesitated, then lowered his head. She already knew. She stood, cradling her son's body, and turned toward her ship. A man, one of her former officers, took a hesitant step forward. Helena, what are you going to do? Her voice was steady. I'm going to remind them what happens when they forget who we are. She disappeared into her ship without another word. The colony held its breath. Then, across the planet, every human communicator lit up with a single transmission. A simple, undeniable message, broadcast on every frequency, across every human world, into the depths of space itself. To the Yarrick Dominion, you have made a mistake. I am coming. The stars trembled. The Yarrick Dominion did not fear humans. It was an empire that had subjugated thousands of worlds, erased entire civilizations, and ruled the galaxy with an iron grip for millennia. It was not in their nature to be concerned with minor species, and certainly not one as primitive and erratic as humanity. So when the message from General Helena Roger reached Yarrick High Command, it was dismissed as nothing more than empty bravado. A human mother's grief, a desperate, irrational threat from a species that barely had interstellar capabilities. The Dominion's ruling body, the High Yarrick Conclave, saw no reason to respond. Ambassador Zeltok, a seasoned diplomat known for his disdain for what he called lesser beings, leaned back in his hovering chair, clicking his mandibles in amusement as he replayed the transmission. An emotional outburst, he scoffed, addressing the other members of the conclave. Typical of their kind. This General Roger believes herself capable of vengeance against us? Let her scream into the void. It changes nothing. There was some laughter around the chamber, though one voice hesitated. Junior Intelligence Officer Varnak cleared his throat, his posture rigid. With respect, Ambassador, I have reviewed historical records on this individual. The humans have myths about her. Some of them suggest she... Myths. Zeltok interrupted, his tone dripping with condescension. We do not entertain primitive stories here, officer. Facts. Numbers. Statistics. Varnak hesitated. The numbers are difficult to quantify. She has led human forces to victory against impossible odds multiple times. There are accounts of her defeating entire armadas through unconventional tactics. I strongly recommend a more cautious approach. Zeltok waved a claw dismissively. Unconventional? You mean reckless. Humans rely on unpredictability because they lack discipline. Our forces have crushed every rebellion, every insurgency. This is no different. She is no different. There was a murmur of agreement, though Varnak still looked uneasy. Another member of the conclave, War Minister Krethkal, interjected. Regardless, protocol dictates a response. Dispatch a fleet. Not a large one, perhaps a single dreadnought and a few cruisers. Show this human the futility of her anger. If she survives, capture her. A public execution should put an end to this nonsense. With that, the matter was settled. The Yarick Dominion had spoken. By the time the fleet arrived at New Terra 3, it was already too late. The first sign of trouble came when the lead dreadnought, Vraction's Claw, emerged from hyperspace and immediately found itself alone. No planetary defenses. No ships in orbit. Not even human distress signals. Admiral Corvos stood on the bridge of the massive warship, his clawed hands gripping the railing as he surveyed the tactical display. Something felt wrong. Scan for anomalies, he ordered. The crew obeyed, their instruments sweeping the empty void. Sir, a technician reported, voice uncertain. We are detecting debris. Corvos frowned. Debris? From what? The answer came a moment later, when the Vraction's Claw turned slightly in orbit and the wreckage of 3 Yarick warships drifted into view. The bridge went silent. Identify, Corvos commanded, though he already knew. One of the wrecks bore the unmistakable insignia of Yarick High Command. These ships had been stationed at Outpost Theta, one of the Dominion's most fortified strongholds. There had been no reports of an attack, no distress calls. And yet here they were, reduced to floating ruins. Then a transmission came through, cutting through all Yarick communications with eerie precision. At first, there was nothing but static. Then a voice. Smooth. Calm. Human. You shouldn't have come. Corvos's spines bristled. Identify yourself. You already know, the voice replied. The Admiral's mandibles clicked in irritation. General Roger. Surrender now, and we may allow you a swift death. There was a chuckle on the other end. Surrender? That's adorable. You came all this way, and you still don't understand, do you? The crew on the bridge exchanged glances. Corvos clenched his fists. What do you think you can accomplish against us? The Dominion is eternal. You are nothing but an insect. Another chuckle, but this time it was laced with something cold. Insect, huh? Let's test that theory. Then, the Yarick fleet systems went haywire. Every screen on the bridge of the Vraction's Claw flickered with static. Alarms blared. Navigation scrambled. Weapon systems locked up. What is happening? Corvos bellowed. A technician's voice was shaking. Sir, we've lost control of our targeting arrays. Impossible. How? The answer came a second later, when every display aboard the warship lit up with an unexpected sight. A human man grinning wildly, wearing sunglasses and a Hawaiian shirt. He held a strange device with flashing lights. Hey there, you ugly lizard bastards, he said cheerfully. Ever heard of a backdoor override? No. Guess you should have hired better programmers. Corvos's rage boiled over. Who is this? The human winked. Name's Vasquez. I work for General Roger, and I just took control of your entire fleet. Oops. The Vraction's Claw suddenly lurched. Corvos was thrown against the railing as the dreadnought's engines ignited. Without command, the warship was moving, straight toward the planet's surface. Overeyed, Corvos howled. Take back control. It's too late, one of the engineers shouted. The navigation system's been hijacked. Vasquez's voice came through once more, smug and delighted. By the way, this isn't a crash. I programmed the ship's AI to believe it needs to land for an urgent bathroom break. See you dirtside. The last thing Corvos heard before impact was human laughter. The dreadnought slammed into the surface of New Terra 3, carving a crater into the earth. The remaining Yarick ships, now leaderless and thrown into disarray, attempted to regroup. That was when General Roger made her entrance. A lone human warship, much smaller than anything the Yarick had fielded, shot out from the clouds like a missile. It wove through enemy fire effortlessly, its pilot moving with precision no artificial intelligence could match. Roger herself was at the helm, her expression unreadable. Inside the ship, her crew operated with ruthless efficiency. Vasquez leaned back in his chair, sipping from a soda. So, want to take bets on how fast they surrender? Another crew member grinned. "I give it 3 minutes." Roger said nothing. She didn't need to. She pressed forward, cutting through the enemy fleet like a scythe through dry grass. Yurick ships exploded in her wake. She docked at the wreck of the Vraxian's Claw, stepping onto the shattered bridge with an almost casual stride. Corvus, bruised and bloody, tried to rise. Roger leveled a pistol at his head. "You killed my son." Corvus's eyes widened. "We." She fired. No hesitation. No speech. Just execution. The war against the Yurick Dominion had begun, and for the first time in history, the galaxy trembled for them. The Yurick Dominion had faced wars before. They had crushed insurrections, obliterated entire species who defied them, and rewritten the history of the galaxy through sheer force. They were not unfamiliar with conflict. What they were unfamiliar with was fear. True, unrelenting, bone-deep fear. And now it was spreading through the highest echelons of their command like wildfire. News of the catastrophe at New Terra 3 had reached the Yurick High Conclave within hours. The loss of Vraxian's Claw was bad enough, but the reports that followed were worse. Much worse. The entire fleet that had been dispatched to subdue one human was either obliterated or missing. A dreadnought had been hijacked, a full military installation had gone silent, and there was no record of any survivors. What was worse, General Helena Roger had disappeared. The conclave chamber was a place of power, a sprawling structure floating above the Yurick homeworld, encased in shimmering energy shields and surrounded by a defense grid capable of repelling planetary invasions. No enemy had ever set foot inside. Yet, for the first time in the Dominion's long history, there was uncertainty within those walls. Ambassador Zeltok sat hunched at the central table, his claws digging into the polished obsidian surface. His usually sharp, condescending tone was nowhere to be found. "This cannot be real," he muttered. "A single human cannot be responsible for this." The others around the table were silent. Varnak, the junior intelligence officer, cleared his throat. "It is real," he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "And it is only getting worse. Reports indicate that several of our outer colonies have gone dark. No distress signals, no transmissions. Just silence." War Minister Krethkal slammed a fist onto the table. "This is absurd. We are the Dominion. We do not cower from lesser species." Varnak hesitated before responding. "Minister, we have intercepted human communications. They are calling this the Roger Doctrine. She isn't fighting a war." He exhaled. "She is making an example of us." A cold hush fell over the room. There had been no formal declaration of war, no grand speeches, no negotiations, just death. Silent, efficient, methodical. Wherever the Yurick had held power, she was erasing it. Krethkal leaned forward, mandibles clicking in agitation. "We need to know how she is doing this. We need intelligence." Varnak hesitated again before pressing a button on the table's console. A holographic projection flickered to life above them. It was a heavily classified dossier, one that had never before been deemed worthy of high conclave review. The title read, "Homo sapiens, Psychological and Tactical Analysis." Zeltok scowled. "What is this nonsense?" Varnak scrolled through the document. "Our previous assessments of humanity were incomplete, dismissive. We cataloged their technological capabilities, their lack of centralized power, their apparent irrationality. But we failed to acknowledge the real danger." He stopped at a particular section of the report and read aloud. "Humans display an unparalleled ability to adapt to crisis situations. Unlike other species, which rely on instinct or genetic programming, humans have evolved to improvise. This trait, coupled with their intrinsic sense of vengeance and capacity for emotional decision-making, makes them uniquely dangerous in prolonged conflicts. Unlike most civilizations, which seek either victory or survival, humans have a documented history of engaging in revenge warfare, conflicts waged solely for retribution, regardless of cost or collateral." The room was silent. Zeltok's eyes twitched. "What are you suggesting?" Varnak scrolled further. Unlike the Yarick, who strategize based on logic, humans make erratic decisions that defy standard military models. They create chaos. They exploit weaknesses not just in systems, but in thinking. And General Roger is an expert in this. Krethkal scoffed. She is one individual. Varnak pulled up a map of the Dominion. Red marks dotted multiple systems. One individual who is systematically dismantling us. One individual who has already cost us 2 fleets for outposts and an entire dreadnought. His voice grew sharper. We do not understand her. We do not understand humans. And now we are paying the price for it. The room remained frozen as the weight of the revelation settled. Zeltok finally exhaled. So what do we do? For the first time, no one had an answer. The Yarick Dominion had never fought an enemy like this before. Every species they had conquered had played by the same rules. Battles fought over resources, territory, survival. But Roger wasn't fighting for any of those things. She wasn't even fighting for victory. She was fighting because they had taken her son. And that made her unstoppable. The Dominion's forces scrambled to respond. Entire fleets were pulled from their positions to reinforce core worlds. Intelligence officers scoured records for anything they could find about General Roger, her history, her tactics, her weaknesses. Every known human informant was interrogated, but the answers they provided only deepened the fear. She doesn't have weaknesses, one prisoner muttered under his breath. You think she does. But that's the mistake everyone makes. The Yarick interrogator bared his teeth. She is a single human, a biological organism. She can be killed. The prisoner laughed, a humorless, unsettling sound. Killed? Maybe. But stopping her? You might as well try to stop gravity. There was another moment of silence before the prisoner leaned forward, his voice lowering to a whisper. Tell me something, friend. Have you ever been on the bad side of a human mother before? The interrogator said nothing. The prisoner grinned. Then you have no idea what's coming. Yarick fleet commanders deployed their ships into defensive formations around their homeworld, determined to make a final stand. They had no idea when or where Roger would strike next, and that was part of the terror. She didn't follow conventional military strategy. She didn't adhere to patterns or rules. She could be anywhere. She could be watching them now. And, in a way, she was. In the depths of space, aboard a stolen Yarick warship, General Roger observed the chaos she had created. Her crew, a ragtag group of human outcasts and former soldiers, watched her in silence. Vasquez, her tech specialist, finally broke it. They're losing their minds down there. Roger didn't respond. Vasquez exhaled. You know, at some point, they will throw everything they have at you. You can't keep doing this alone. Roger turned to him, her gaze steady. I don't plan to. Vasquez frowned. Then what's the play here? She leaned forward, tapping a control panel. The map of the Yarick Dominion lit up. Red marks indicated her attacks. Blue marks indicated human colonies. And somewhere in the center, one planet stood alone. The Yarick homeworld. Vasquez stared at it. You're not serious. Roger's voice was calm. They took my son. Now I take everything from them. Vasquez let out a low whistle. All right then. Guess we're really doing this. She turned back toward the display, her expression unyielding. The Dominion had made a mistake. Now, they would learn what it meant to pay for it. The Yarick homeworld had never known war. It had been the heart of an empire that stretched across the galaxy, a world of impenetrable defenses and arrogant certainty. It had stood untouched for thousands of years, a testament to the Dominion's absolute control over the lesser species beneath them. No enemy had ever dared set foot upon it. Until now, General Helena Roger had given them time. She had watched as the Yarick scrambled to respond to the growing terror she had unleashed. She had studied their desperation, their frantic attempts to defend themselves against an opponent they still did not understand. The moment they had begun fortifying their borders, pulling their fleets inward to protect what mattered most, she knew they had given her exactly what she needed. A clear path to their throat. The Yarick defense grid was the most advanced in the known universe, An intricate web of energy barriers, automated turrets, and planetary shields designed to repel entire armadas. It had never failed. It had never even been tested. The Yarick believed that no force in existence could breach it. They had never accounted for her. The moment Roger arrived, the planet-wide alarms blared. Yarick commanders, battle-hardened and disciplined, rushed to their stations, issuing orders in clipped, urgent tones. Ships swarmed into defensive positions, bristling with weapons, prepared to meet an enemy fleet with overwhelming force. But there was no fleet, no armada. There was only one ship, a stolen Yarick war cruiser, painted in human military black, with a single message scrawled in bright red across the hull in Terran script. Mom's home. For a long, terrible moment, the Yarick hesitated. This was absurd. This was impossible. A lone ship against an entire planet's defenses? No sane commander would attempt this. It had to be a trick. Then the ship vanished. Not destroyed. Not cloaked. Simply gone. Sensors malfunctioned. Targeting systems failed. Yarick warships scanned frantically, searching for something that should have been impossible. Then, without warning, the planetary shields shut down. Not by force. Not by a massive energy strike. By an override command. On the Yarick capital city's central screens, their own internal security system displayed a new image. An Earth meme. A grinning human face, teeth far too large, with the words, "Your IT security sucks," flashing underneath. Panic erupted across the command centers. The shield generators had been infiltrated, their codes rewritten. Someone had walked right past their defenses, as if they had left the front door open. And then the ship reappeared, descending rapidly through the open sky, weaving through the fleet's chaotic, panic fire. It should have been shot down. It should have been destroyed before ever reaching the surface. But it wasn't. The ship landed in the heart of a Yarick capital, crushing a golden monument dedicated to their emperor. The ramp lowered, and she walked out. General Helena Roger did not wear the heavy battle armor of human military tradition. She did not need it. The black tactical suit she wore was unadorned, save for a single patch on her shoulder, the insignia of Earth's old military forces. Her boots struck the polished obsidian streets with slow, deliberate force. She carried no visible weapon. She was the weapon. Yarick soldiers surrounded her within seconds, forming a wall of bodies, weapons raised. "Human," one of them barked, his voice trembling despite his best effort to sound commanding. "You are under arrest. You will kneel before the High Conclave and answer for your crimes." Roger looked at him, looked through him. "My son was 6 years old." The words were spoken softly, almost conversationally. The Yarick commander shifted uneasily. "Your actions have brought destruction to our empire. You will." She moved, faster than any of them expected, faster than any of them could react. 1 second she was standing still. The next, she was inside their formation. Her hands were a blur of movement, disarming, breaking, dismantling. Bones snapped. Weapons fell. Bodies hit the ground. None of them had even seen how she did it. The remaining soldiers stumbled back in terror. She looked at them the way a hurricane might look at a city before swallowing it whole. "Where," she asked, voice quiet, "is your emperor?" The question was not answered. Not immediately. The entire city had gone still, watching, frozen in disbelief, as the nightmare they had dismissed as human propaganda unfolded before their eyes. Then the palace doors opened, and the emperor of the Yarick dominion emerged. Vrakoth had ruled for nearly 300 years, his reign one of absolute, unquestioned dominance. His body, far larger than the average Yarick, was adorned in ceremonial armor, his long, segmented tail curling behind him as he stepped forward. He did not look afraid. He should have been. "You believe yourself mighty human," Vrakoth said, his voice echoing across the stunned city. "But you stand alone." Roger exhaled. "No," she said. "I don't." Behind her, the sky burned. Explosions erupted across the city's defense turrets. Yarick warships, their own warships, turned against their own forces. Panic spread like wildfire as power grids failed, entire sections of the city collapsing into darkness. Vasquez's voice crackled over Roger's earpiece. "Yo, boss? Their own navy just started shooting at them. You want us to stop, or?" Roger smirked. "Keep going." The Yurick had lost control of their planet. "Do you feel it now?" Roger asked, stepping toward the Emperor. "That feeling in your chest? The one tightening around your lungs?" Vrakatha's eyes flickered, but he said nothing. Roger tilted her head. "That's fear." The Emperor's tail lashed. "You think you can end the Dominion? We are eternal. You are just one human." "Yeah," Roger said. "And look what I did." Silence stretched between them. For the first time in history, the Yurick Dominion surrendered. The remaining Conclave members, scrambling for survival, signed an unconditional treaty of peace, declaring all hostilities toward humanity permanently banned. The Yurick fleets, the largest in the known universe, were disarmed under human oversight. And General Helena Roger, the woman they had laughed at, the woman they had dismissed, walked out of their city with everything they had taken from her. Her son alive. Yurick scientists had performed the impossible. Desperate to end their suffering, they had turned to the most forbidden of technologies. The child they had erased had been restored, not as an act of kindness, not out of remorse, but out of raw, unrelenting terror. And as Roger stood on the bridge of her ship, her son wrapped in her arms, she looked down at the world she had conquered. The message had been sent. A new law was written into the stars. Do not touch what belongs to a human mother. And then, just like that, she was gone. The Yurick Dominion had not merely lost a war. It had lost everything.